Sanjay Jha, we would have expected that there be some kind of political unity on a day when the Prime Minister has sent such a strong message from the high altitude of Ladakh. Instead, what we see from the Congress is a continuation of the carping and the criticism. Can we not put politics on this matter for a hold, at least for a short while?
You know, Rahul, I understand where you're coming from, but, you know, let me put the facts on the table right at the very beginning. You know, national security, foreign policy, territorial boundaries, these are not the prerogative of any political party or a government in power. You know, we are all stakeholders. It doesn't matter whether we have got 52 MPs or another party has got 20. It doesn't make any difference. You know, the fundamental point that we need to understand, and I'm going to quote to you the Indian ambassador to China. You know, the Indian ambassador to China called Mr. Vikram Mishri, who incidentally also happens to be my batch in my business school. He went on record to say just the other day that the Chinese were in the Indian side of the line of actual control. Now, why is it that, you know, this government of Mr. Modi, which has got a track record of being the most opaque and sinister in terms of manipulating data and information, is actually trying to, at this point of time, which is so sensitive, especially with a militarily aggressive China definitely intruding into our territories, playing these, you know, what I call is smokes and mirror games. You know, you're a seasoned politicalist, and I want to this fact here that at this point, all political parties, I believe, and you know, there are some things some leaders have said I don't approve of, but I do believe that India has a mature political consensus. But to ask the government that why have you, when Mr. Rajnath Singh, the defense minister, said thousands of Chinese have entered into India. On Galwan Valley, the Prime Minister does the 56-inch chest thumping, playing to the domestic, you know, huge gallery of his that nobody's crossed into the Indian territory, actually giving the Chinese a handle to make a claim on Galwan Valley. I think that is a monumental, mammoth, diplomatic, political disaster for which the Prime Minister himself needs to speak up.
So he has spoken. After that, so even if the first message, no, 1 second, Sanjay Jha, even if the first message was defensive and muddled, there was no ambiguity in what the Prime Minister said today. This is the strongest declaration of intent any Indian political leader has demonstrated publicly against China, bar none.
Well, I want to make a short point here. You know, Mr. Modi's rhetorical flamboyance is legendary. Can it get the lives of the 20 soldiers who were brutalized to death? Can it get them back? It's like, it reminds me of what Mr. Modi said in his second lockdown speech, if I remember. It was smacking of, you know, such brazen triumphalism. We have done better than the rest of the world, and India is on the way to, you know, proving it wrong. Look where we are today. I think Mr. Modi's speeches are given far too much exaggerated importance. I don't think anybody in this country is not standing up for the army. I agree they need to be motivated. Nobody is criticizing Mr. Modi's content of his speech today in Ladakh. But you know what? Politics and foreign policy is actually ground reality. You've got to recognize that we are at the moment checkmated. Can we fight a two-front war? I'm hearing a lot of nationalists coming on TV channels and saying that China is on a decline and we can take a two-front war. I think they need to get their heads examined. Okay. Vipin Narang, sitting where you are in the United States, how do you think this speech will be viewed internationally?
Hi, Rahul. Thanks for having me. Prime Minister Modi's political instincts are second to none, and I view the speech much along the lines as Brahma, who I've disagreed with in the past on many things, but I think he's absolutely right here. This was largely for domestic political consumption. It certainly boosted the morale of the troops who may be deployed on the LAC for a long time, and there was a rally around the flag effect. It did demonstrate resolve. It was a clear signal of national resolve against the Chinese, but resolve in and of itself doesn't produce results. And the fundamental question still remains, which is how are the Indians going to induce the Chinese to disengage? And regardless of whether the Chinese have made incursions onto quote-unquote Indian territory, there has been a substantial change to the status quo on the ground that gives the Chinese tactical advantages in multiple places across the LAC, and in aggregate pose a significant strategic challenge to India's position in Ladakh. And so, you know, the options that India faces and the government faces are not great. So you either have to prosecute a limited conflict to expel the Chinese directly, open up other fronts elsewhere where the Chinese have certainly by now defended any vulnerabilities they may have, or one has to accept it and then risk the chance that you've emboldened the dragon, so to speak. And so the speech itself was, a good necessary step, I think, for domestic politics and for the troops who are forward deployed. But it doesn't change the facts on the ground. And I think the Chinese, once the applause and the drama dies down of the speech, will look at the facts on the ground and agree that time benefits them. And the fact that the Chinese have not been, terribly interested in disengagement negotiations and are stalling for time, to me suggests that they are playing for the long haul, consolidating their positions, which will make it much more difficult to dislodge them.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.